Man, I gotta talk about something that's been brought up a lot lately. It's this thing where people wonder why I don't quote scripture, and I just got listening. I just got through listening to Jesse Lee Peterson's Sunday service, and there was a comment in the comment section that talked about basically criticizing him for not quoting scripture, and pointed out the fact that Jesus quoted scripture all the time. The Jewish scripture back in the day. And it made me realize where the misconceptions coming from because they believe that the scripture is the way and not just the means. Because Jesus had to speak from scripture because he needed a language to communicate. The language back then was through the Jewish scriptures. So they're basically mistaking the means for the cause. Jesus would not have been able to make anyone understand unless he was using scripture as a starting point, if that makes sense. Jewish scripture wasn't the be all end all. Jesus had to make his own metaphors and parables so that he would to make people understand. The same way we do. We have to speak in metaphors. We have to speak in parables in order to get people to understand. And that was a commonality that Jesus had back then. Was the language, not only the language he spoke, but the Jewish scriptures that he had. So he needed a way to speak to people in the same way I do. When I make a metaphor, I can't help but speak English. That's the commonality I have with my audience. We speak English, right? That's a commonality. And I want to thank Stardust Simulation for kind of bringing that word into my mind, because when I was reading that comment, I couldn't help but go. It just hit me as like, oh, Jesus's commonality with his culture, with his time, was the Jewish scripture. So he had to talk about, in order to get people to wake up, in order to get them to see, to make them understand, he had to talk. He had to find the commonality, which is Jewish scripture back in the day, and the language he used, and the metaphors he used. Anytime he talks about bread, he talks about bread and fish all the time because that's the wisdom. That's wisdom. Anytime the Bible talks about Jesus giving out loaves of bread or giving out fish, that's wisdom and knowledge. That's just straight up what it means to me now. Because it's easy. Like, bread and fish is easy to make. It's easy to make. You can make it for anybody. There's nothing complicated about it. And that's the perfect metaphor in my opinion. But a lot of people read the Bible and think that he's literally talking about bread. Like when he fed the 3,000 people, I think it was, out of a few loaves of bread and fish, and he was able to, divvy it up for everybody. People literally think that he was like making sandwiches for everybody, and that's insane to me. That never made sense. It doesn't make sense. Anytime it's talked about where he's handing out bread and fish, or anytime bread is mentioned or yeast is mentioned in the Bible, it's knowledge and wisdom. The bread and fish are just the commonality of the day because people need to eat, if that makes sense. The Stardust Simulation talks a good bit about commonalities on his channel. I really enjoyed the big one that he brought up was, at least the United States, was football, American football. The NFL, the Super Bowl was just a few days ago, I think, or a week ago. And it's like, that's the commonality. You can go to any state, like he says in his videos. Y'all need to go check him out. He says in his videos, you can go to any state in the United States, and if you enjoy the NFL, or if you enjoy any other sport, really, you're going to find a commonality between yourself and a stranger. And that's what Jesus had to do. He had to communicate to strangers. That he had to find the commonality between all the people he was talking to in order to get them to understand. The scripture was just the means. It wasn't the final goal. It wasn't the source. The things that Jesus was talking about was within him already. In the same way, it's within you. It's within me. It's within Jesse. Jesse doesn't need to quote the Bible to get people to understand because he's speaking our language. He's speaking the cultural language. He's black. He's from the South. He could speak that language to people and get them to understand. And that's what I realized about Jesse recently, is that the reason I started watching him is because he was funny. He made me laugh. He's a funny man. He's not trying to be funny. That's just the way he is. That's the commonality that I had with him at first. Anyway, I think I made my point. If you have any questions or comments, just leave it in the comment section. I'll be here. Have a nice day.